Hello folks, Peter Lawn here. Welcome to my beginner's tutorial series on how to use Blender to build bases in No Man's Sky. This is part 4 of the series that will focus on the Blender plugin to help you work with No Man's Sky base objects within the Blender 3D workspace. This tutorial is designed for PC users only, and if you're unfamiliar with the software needed, please check out parts 1 to 3 of this series, which includes workflow overview and how to install this awesome Blender plugin designed by Charlie Banks. The Blender plugin for No Man's Sky is a collection of built-in Python scripts to perform specific functions on the No Man's Sky objects in Blender. It is very handy for generating parts from a library, snapping objects together, applying colors, and managing power wiring. Its main function, of course, is to facilitate the import-export function of our base information in and out of the Blender 3D workspace. The Blender plugin interface. In this previous tutorial, part 3, focused on the Blender interface and commands, and we hid the Blender plugin to make room on the main window. We'll bring back the No Man's Sky Blender plugin interface into view by hitting the N key to toggle the sidebar display window and clicking on the No Man's Sky tab on the right side. You'll see the plugin has several main sections that are collapsible, and we're going to work on a base file to see the plugin in action and explain each section along with some examples. The first section is simply called No Man's Sky Base Builder, and it has 5 button options. The New button is used to start a new Blender file. I don't normally use this button for a couple of reasons. Number 1, it wipes your current base scene clean and actually doesn't start a new file, or ask you if you want to save your work, which could be problematic. Number 2, it doesn't start a file with your default view or Windows layout. I would highly recommend to use Blender's new file command, Control plus the N key, where both items are addressed, and it will ask you if you want to save the currently open file and puts your default view and windows where you want them to be. Load and save buttons are just like the default Blender file operations tools, pretty self-explanatory. And of course, you have the Import button to copy the base information into Blender from the Windows clipboard, and the Export button to copy the current base info in Blender back into the Windows clipboard. If you're unfamiliar with this process, check out part 2 of this series for an explanation of the workflow. The Base Properties section contains the base name, which is the base name you assign at the base computer in No Man's Sky, and it also shows you the galactic address where in the galaxy this base is and associated system can be found. You can use these coordinates with online utilities to get the glyph sequence that somebody would have to punch into an activated portal to get to your system, for example. The Tools section has some really cool features. At the top right, you get a total part count in your base. This part count does not include the power connection points, so that's why this count is different than Blender's own object count status bar at the bottom right of the screen shown here. I believe you need to keep total parts count below 3000 or your base may not be uploadable to the servers in the game at the base computer. This means other players may not see your base if they visit. You also have an option of toggling prefab structures as well as floors, walls, and roofs into 3 different view modes, including Normal, which is the default view with everything visible and selectable, to Ghosted, where these objects are in X-ray mode, and non-selectable, to Invisible, where they're completely hidden from view and obviously non-selectable. This could be handy in certain circumstances, for example when you want to focus on the interior layout of a building and maybe arrange some furniture. Be aware it applies to all objects in the entire base, and the objects will be exempt from select commands, including Select All command, which is the A key. The Duplicate button will copy the currently selected item. If you are in more than one object selected, it will only copy the active item, the object with the light orange outline. This command is similar to Blender's Shift-D command to duplicate an object, except with some differences. For some objects, the script is designed to snap the copied item to the currently selected object. This works well for things like floor plates and walls and stairs, etc. You will use the Duplicate button a lot with the snap tools shown over here on the right. For example, if I wanted to extend these stairs with the Duplicate command, I can highlight the stair section, hit Duplicate, and then the script will copy and snap the copied stair section to it. I didn't want to extend the stairs up, so I'm going to go to the snap section and click on the Target Next button to have them snap to the bottom section of those stairs. You can mess with this Source Next and Previous buttons to see the snap effects. We'll show some more examples of the snap function a little later. With some items, you will click the duplicate button and it appears nothing happened, like for instance with this electromagnetic generator. I duplicated it, but it doesn't appear to be duplicated. However, it did copy the item, it just placed the item directly in the same spot as the original. You see, if I move this EG, the other one is directly underneath. This feature is awesome for things like electromagnetic generators, solar powers, batteries, mineral and gas extractors, and storage silos, because you can instantly double your power generation, extraction, and storage capacities with each click of this duplicate button and use only one power or piping connection to connect them all. You want to be careful with the duplicate button when copying mini teleporters, or what's called the short-range teleporter in the game. You can get undesirable effects when two are located in exactly the same spot. Use the plugin duplicate command with caution and use it for single object copying only while using the snap commands to orient the copied item. I suggest using Blender's duplicate command, Shift+D, if you want to copy multiple objects or power connections, as the plugin duplicate command does not copy these. Duplicate along a curve is an interesting command that allows duplicating an object along one of Blender's curve objects. For example, let's say I want to create a circle of cylinders in No Man's Sky. I'm going to start with this cylinder object, and the first thing I'm going to do is move my 3D cursor to the cylinder object's origin. I will select the cylinder, then holding the Shift+S key to bring up the Blender's Snap Commands menu, I'll select the option Cursor to Selection to move the 3D cursor to the center of the cylinder. Now I will add a curve object which will position at the 3D cursor. I enter Shift+A and select Curve, Circle. I'll size up the circle object by hitting the S key and left mouse click and drag to size the circle. Now I will select the object we want to duplicate along the curve. Left mouse click on the cylinder and then add to the selection the curve object by holding Shift plus left mouse click on the curve. Now in the plugin menu, select Duplicate Along Curve and it will come up with a distance between item enter box. This value needs to be between 0 and 1 and represents how far apart the duplicated items will be spaced along the curve. Let's start with 0.05 to see what we get. Okay, that's cool, but I want my cylinders to be just touching each other. You can do that by either redoing the duplicate along curve process using a smaller spacing number, or you can grab the circle and resize it until the objects are touching like this. You'll notice operations performed on the curve itself will change the positioning of the associated objects along the curve. This is because the Python script creates these objects with a constraint to the curve properties. So if you size or rotate the curve, the objects will follow. You can still manipulate individual objects, but their relative position will always be tied to the curve position. If you delete the curve, the associated constraints will be deleted, and you'll end up with a whole bunch of objects located now at your base computer location. In my Advanced Blender Building Tricks tutorial, Part 5, we'll re-look at this command to do more complex things with it. The Delete button allows you to delete single or multiple items that are currently selected. We briefly touched on snap commands earlier, but here's another tip when snapping items together. First off, the plugin snap command only works on two objects. Suppose I want to snap the center of this floor plate to this cylinder. I select the floor plate, then add to the selection by Shift plus left mouse click the cylinder. You'll notice that in multiple selection commands, it's always the last selected item that becomes the currently selected object, as indicated by the bright orange outline around the item. This is where the floor plate goes to when I click the snap command in the plugin. If I wanted it the other way, I select the cylinder first, then add the floor plate to the selection, which becomes the active object, and then click on the plugin snap command to move the cylinder to the floor plate. For connectable items such as stairs and floor plates, for example, when you use the snap command, they will connect together at predetermined snap points. If you don't like where they're connected, play around with the target, source, previous, and next buttons to get the desired orientation. The next expandable menu is called Color. You can apply textures and colors to game objects in this section. Be aware that not all in-game objects support changes in textures or colors, even though you can make the changes with Plugin in Blender, so you need to play with this and load into the game to see the results. Just highlight an object and click a texture, then select a color to make the changes. The next expandable menu is the Power and Logic menu. This is one of my favorite build menus along with the Snap menu because it allows ease and flexibility when dealing with power items. This section has some buttons for wiring options as well as buttons to quickly add logic devices such as switches, proximity sensors, buttons, and other electrical control devices to your builds. The new point button adds a connection point that looks a little like a lightning bolt when you zoom in close to have a look at it. The interesting thing about this point is that it is universal in that it can represent an end connection for an electrical wire or a portal line between mini teleporters or a pipeline, for example, between an extractor and a silo object. The important thing to note is that every portal line, power line, and pipeline has two end connection points and of course the line itself. If we want to connect a power line to an EG here, we highlight the connector and add the EG to our selection with Shift plus left mouse click, and we hit the Connect button in the plugin to complete a power line connection. The plugin will always connect to the closest connector points between the selected objects. You can also move connector points and the line will automatically follow. Remember, if you're moving objects that are connected, to also select the connector points prior to the move command so the objects will stay connected. We wouldn't normally connect items in this fashion, as the plugin is smart enough to recognize electrical object snap points. So if I want to connect this solar panel and this battery together, I just select both items and click the Connect button on the plugin. The two connection points in the electrical wire will automatically be generated and snap to the closest points between them. What if I didn't want the closest snap points to the solar panel to be connected? No problem. Highlight the connection point you want to change and add the solar panel to the selection, then click the Target Next button on the plugin. See how the snap connection changes as I hit this button multiple times. Let's look at a little more complex situation where I have two teleporters that I want to connect a teleport line to. If you look close at the mini teleporter, there are actually two connection points. The top one is the teleporter line connection, and the bottom one here is the electrical connection. I highlight both teleporters and click the Connect button. The problem is that the plugin created an electrical connection between them, and I wanted a teleporter line, right? No big deal. What I can do is I can select the connection point, then add the teleporter to the selection and click the Target Next button to move it to the teleport connection. I'm going to do the same for the other teleporter. We still have a problem though. The plugin still thinks this is an electrical connection and we want a teleport line connection. If I select the connection line and then look at the item properties up here on the right side of our display window and go down and expand the property selection, you will notice the connection line has an object ID section that says it's a U_power line. You can force the connection line to change to a teleporter line by changing this to U_portal line like this. The same thing can be done for pipeline connections between silos, for example. If I connect both these silos using the Connect button, the plugin thinks I'm connecting electrically. I'll select a line, go to the Item Properties section again, and this time I will change U_power line to U_pipeline in the object ID. These logic buttons along here allow you to add circuit devices to your base scene. One thing to note is they will be added at the origin of the currently selected object. So if I select this floor plate and click the inverter on the plugin, the inverter will be added at the floor plate origin. If you don't have anything selected, this device will add over at the base computer location, so be aware of that. Again, when connecting circuit devices, remember the connection will be made at the closest connection between the objects. Using the Target Next and Previous buttons will change the snap locations. The divide button allows you to break a connection point midpoint on the connection line. Simply select the connection, in this case between the solar panel and this battery, and click on the Plug-in Divide button. You see the additional connection point created here. Now I can snap to a nearby additional solar panel by selecting the new connection point, adding the solar panel to my selection, and then clicking on the Target Next button in the Snap menu. And finally, the Split command allows you to split a connection line with two connection points. Suppose I wanted to insert a proximity switch between the power feed to this teleporter to only power it when I get close. Selecting the existing connection point, click on the Split button in the plugin, and now I can connect in my proximity switch. The Build section is the area of the plugin where we can access a library of No Man's Sky objects and bring them into the 3D workspace. We can also create, manage, and download No Man's Sky groups of objects as something called presets. The two buttons at the top of this section define the look of this window area of the plugin. When we are in the parts mode, we have access to the library of parts shown in group sections below, or in presets mode, where the preset directory contents is shown in the window area for you to select from. Let's focus on the parts selection first. As with adding any object from the plugin, if you click on the library part you want to add into your base scene, there are three potential locations the newly added part will go. Number 1, if you do not have any parts selected and you click on a library part, the newly added part will go where your base computer is. Number 2, if you currently have a part selected that does not have a common snap property with the newly added library part, the added part will move to the origin of the currently selected object. For example, when I select this bed and add a cylinder, which has no common connection points, the cylinder goes to the bed's origin. Number 3, if you have a selected part that does have a common snap property with the newly added part, the added library part will snap to predetermined positions connected to the selected object. I want to add a concrete wall attached to this floor plate, for example. In this scenario, you can use the Snap tool buttons Next and Previous to toggle part orientation and connection position to the original selected part. Note that the newly added part becomes the currently active object in the scene. There is also a search function at the bottom of the library list that allows for quick lookup of parts. The parts library is pretty extensive. However, not all new game objects may be in the library, so check back regularly with the author's website for the latest updates. The Presets button switches the window contents to display all the available presets. This list will be populated with entries in the Presets folder. You can view the contents of this folder by clicking on the Open Presets folder button that opens Windows Explorer and shows all the presets stored in the User Profile / No Man's Sky Base Builder / Presets folder. These files all have a .json extension. Presets are a group of objects or base components that you wish to save as a library. Let's say I like this landing pad arrangement in my base and I want to save it as a preset to be used with other bases I work with in Blender. The first thing I would do is open another instance of Blender. I will switch back to the base and highlight the landing pad arrangement and hit Ctrl+C to copy all objects selected. Now switch to the new instance of Blender and paste in the landing pad objects with Ctrl+V. Now I have a clean Blender workspace with only the landing pad objects I want to create a preset for. In the Build menu of the plugin under Presets, click the Save as Preset button and type the new name of the preset and click OK to save it to the Presets folder. Now anytime I want to add the landing pads to any other base, I just click on the preset landing pads and the entire assembly is imported into the base I'm currently working on. Just a couple things to be aware of when working with presets. Number 1, if you attempt to delete the preset, all of the preset objects will disperse into your general collection list of base parts. And they will be marked as non-selectable and therefore you cannot delete them until you select them all in your object list, toggle them as selectable, and then you can delete them. It's pretty easy if they are the only objects in your base scene, but you can imagine how difficult this would be with a complicated base file. A warning about using the edit buttons that are adjacent to the preset library items if you're still working with a large base file. If you click on any of these edit buttons, it will wipe your current workspace clean. It doesn't ask you anything, and it will drop the preset into the center of your current file you have open. This would be disastrous if you accidentally saved the file and lost all your base edits. This is why I would recommend to start a new file with Blender's Ctrl+N key first before editing any preset files with this method. The little X beside each preset item will delete the preset file from the presets directory. The Get More Presets button will launch your browser to Charlie Bank's No Man's Sky Base Builder Presets website on GitHub. This is an awesome location to get some presets you can add to your library to use in your Blender base builds. Well, that's it, folks. I truly want to thank you for watching this video, and I hope you got something out of it. I also want to thank Charlie Banks and any other contributors to this truly awesome tool. It has made base building No Man's Sky such a great experience and has opened up a ton of creative ideas from the community. So bye for now, and we'll catch you on the flip side.